A lot of the talk this week was about stimulus. We thought we had that $908 billion stimulus bill. Then President Trump up and said, no, I don't like it. What do you think about where we are in stimulus?
Look, we're better off with stimulus than we are without stimulus. I don't think the $2,000 checks make much sense. The real issue is going to be sustaining this expansion. You think about it, the 908 stimulus bill probably would pay out $200 to $250 billion a month for the next 3 months. The level of compensation is running about $30 billion a month below what we would have expected it would. GDP is running about $70 billion a month below what we would have expected it would. So in a way that's quite unprecedented, we have stimulus already much more than filling out the hole. And given that lots of the hole is from the fact not that people don't want to spend, but that they can't spend because they can't take a flight or they can't go to a restaurant, I don't necessarily think that the priority should be on promoting consumer spending beyond where we are now. So I'm not even sure that I'm so enthusiastic about the $600 checks. And I think taking them to $2,000 would actually be a pretty serious mistake that would risk a temporary overheat. I would like to see more assistance to state and local governments. I would like to see more money put into testing, more money put into accelerating vaccines. But gosh, David, I think it would be a real mistake to be going to $2,000. And I have to say that when you see the two extremes agreeing, you can almost be certain that something crazy is in the air. And so when I see a coalition of Josh Hawley, Bernie Sanders, and Donald Trump getting behind an idea, I think that's time to run for cover. And I know that many of my fellow Keynesians who believe in fiscal stimulus will likely be in favor of this, but sometimes there can be too much, too poorly designed of even a basically good idea. And that's my reaction to $2,000 stimulus.
Well, it's not massive the way a move to $2,000 a person would be, but when you talk about maybe poorly designed, we've got a 5,600-page bill, give or take here. A lot of stuff in there probably nobody knows is quite what's in there. But you've had a chance to look at some of it now. Are there some things that really jump out at you and say, boy, that doesn't make much sense to me?
There are two things that strike me as really big time dumb. The first is the resurrection of the 3 martini lunch. That was repealed by like the Reagan administration on principle that why should the company canteen not be tax deductible when you eat there, and Fat Cat executive lunches be deductible for all concerns and not treated as income. We put it back for 2 years. That's beyond where people think this pandemic's going to be. The reason they put it back for 2 years was because they knew that once it had been there for 2 years, it was going to be hard not to keep extending. So I think that qualifies as the worst tax provision of the decade. And it's a decade that's seen some real doozies. The other one, David, where it doesn't make much sense is if you get a PPP loan and so you don't bear any expense for a portion of your payroll, why should you get to deduct a payment you didn't make? Or equivalently, if the government's going to give you money, how come that's not being called income? And so that sort of overpayment seems to me to be another thing that's just a straight out giveaway. And make no mistake, these things are not there by accident. These things are there because people put them there. And they're there then because other people didn't have the courage to resist them even though they knew that they were wrong.
I talked to Dr. Anthony Fauci, and he said he thinks a sort of base case, center of the bell curve, is we'll be back to something approaching what he called normal by the end of the summer, toward Labor Day. And he defined that as 75 to 80% of the populace inoculated. Does that make sense to you?
I'll be disappointed if it takes until September to get 75% of the population inoculated. I don't see why we shouldn't be able to do it more quickly. I hope that more vaccines will come online than the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines that are online now. I think there's some legitimate issues about whether people should have to get 2 doses or whether 1 dose would be appropriate in many cases. I think there are other things we can do to facilitate a return towards normality that center on making testing much more inexpensive and pervasively available. In general, while the worst by far of the errors have been those of President Trump and those of some of the people on the political side, I think the scientific community's desire for perfection has again and again stopped us from having very, very valuable improvement. The FDA shouldn't be blocking many of the tests they're currently blocking. These vaccines should have come on stream a bit sooner than they did. And we need to be thinking about things from a broad population ethic point of view, which speaks to the importance of speed.
We're going to wrap up the week, as always, with Summer Says. Lightning round here. First of all, as you look at the Biden cabinet and the question of Senate confirmation for the ones who need to be confirmed, if you were going to guess, what portion of that cabinet will be confirmed by January 31?
I would guess that 80% will be confirmed by January 31 and that 90 to 95% will be ultimately confirmed. My guess is there'll be 1 or 2 cases that aren't confirmed, and that the vast majority of those who are confirmed will have been confirmed by the end of January.
What is the biggest political surprise we're going to have over the next 6 months, in your opinion?
I think Donald Trump's going to fade from public view faster than most people expect right now. It's always true that bullies collapse in the face of a bit of kryptonite, and his various legal problems are going to be that kryptonite. If you go back in history to 2 figures who had some resemblance to Donald Trump, Joe McCarthy and Douglas MacArthur both rode extremely high and dominated the media until they didn't. And once they had passed their zenith, the collapse was faster than most people expected. I think that's going to happen with respect to Donald Trump, and I'll bet right now that he will not be a serious candidate for president in 2024.
And let's wrap it up with a markets-related question, the dollar. There's a lot of talk right now about the dollar, and specifically maybe Janet Yellen, as she becomes Treasury Secretary, which most people expect, really taking that mantle the Treasury Secretaries have had, as you know, since the mid-90s, of saying we need a strong dollar. Pache, put aside for one moment what Donald Trump did about it. What do you think the dollar is going to be doing a year from now, stronger or weaker than it is right now?
David, as J.P. Morgan used to say when he was asked a similar question, my prediction based on all my experience in the markets is that the dollar will, I'm very confident about this, fluctuate in the year ahead. I'd be surprised if there was a large move. Janet, as every Treasury Secretary does, will have to find her line on the dollar. I certainly hope she will make clear that it's the Biden administration's intent to build prosperity on a strong foundation of fundamentals, rather than indulge in any idea that it's possible to devalue your way to prosperity. And how she expresses that thought, I'm confident she will find a good way. But it's that essence of a focus on fundamentals rather than devaluation as a prosperity strategy is, I think, the point on which financial authorities have to be